Welcome back everyone. If you're new here, my name is Bryan Jenks, and today it finally happened. Obsidian has block level referencing. For those of you who are interested in personal knowledge management, you are aware that there are two really popular applications nowadays in this space. One is Roam Research, and the other is currently Obsidian. I made a video prior about Roam versus Obsidian, some pros and cons to both, which there are pros and cons to either application, and you can catch that up there or wherever I can put a card. And what we're going to talk about today is block level referencing. Block level referencing was one of the last holdout pieces of functionality that Roam Research really was holding over Obsidian. A lot of people who were on the fence about Roam and Obsidian really wanted to have block level referencing in Obsidian. And at the time, until just today, Obsidian had no way of doing block level referencing to individual lines or paragraphs. All we could really link to was headings or entire files. And you know, for some people this might work. If you kept your atomicity of each individual idea or note into that level, just using headings or the name of the file, that might be good enough. But for some people, they even want more granular referencing where you can reference individual blocks of text inside of a document. The Obsidian developers were working with the people who have developed Foam, which is a personal knowledge management system in VS Code, I believe. And there was some black magic going on with some text references for Markdown, where you were actually using like the upper caret symbol and a randomly generated UID for blocks of text. And this has worked. It's not part of the Markdown standard, but we have block level referencing in Obsidian. So all the people who are holdouts for Roam Research because of the block level referencing, we have it now. So that is what we are going to talk about today in detail. So let's jump right into Obsidian. So first of all, block level referencing is not currently available to the general public. Block level referencing is in version 0.95, which is an insider's release as of today, October 19th, 2020. If you're interested in getting insider releases and early access to a lot of these new releases in Obsidian, you can support the devs at obsidian.md. As a quick aside, I remember watching this video about the development of Foam's block level referencing back in early September by Yanni, I'm just going to guess it's pronounced. But I remember watching this and them using hashes right here for the references that appear at the end of individual blocks of text. These are treated as metadata and not really displayed on preview, but these references were actually using these hashes to point at individual blocks and lines of text. And if I'm not mistaken, this is actually what has been implemented in Obsidian. So this is a little bit of crossover work from Foam and the Obsidian developers. Now, it is important to know that this is not part of any Markdown standard or specification. So using this feature is not really going to play nice with a lot of other tools unless they are specifically designed to use this feature implemented in this way. Now, there are some cool tricks we can get around that, and I'll go over a little bit about that later, but for now, we're actually going to see this live, implemented, and begin using these references. So block level referencing is going to give us a whole new world of functionality in Obsidian where we can now reference granular pieces of text, not just headings and not just file names. This opens a lot of new doors, and there were a lot of new options added in this latest release of 0.9.5. And we're going to go over pretty much everything in gross detail and some of my thoughts about these things. So let's jump right in. So first and foremost, you're probably aware by now that we can reference individual headers and the names of an entire file. So for instance, I'm in my note for Andy Matuszak, and I have a note for Evergreen Notes. Obviously, these are two connected notes because Andy Matuszak is the one who coined Evergreen Notes. But in any case, I'm going to reference, let's say, Evergreen Notes, and I don't really have any headings in here, so actually let's do Andy's note here for socials. So if I do Andy, and then we all can also autocomplete these things now. So I don't need to type out or tab this note. I can just do a hash symbol, and that will autocomplete and then tell me, okay, hash symbol, so you're looking for headings. So which heading would you like to reference in this note? And let's just say socials. Cool. So that's all there is to it. I can preview that, and it just shows that. That's it. So now if I actually preview and hold, in my case for Mac, Command, it'll actually show me a preview of that entire block. Now, my little reference here is part of that block. And let's see if we can actually change that. All right, so now because I have another heading separating this, I'm only referencing this heading and this entire block right here. So this goes based on heading blocks. Everything underneath that heading at the level that that heading is at is going to be included in this reference. So I can preview that. It just shows this. I can hold Command for Mac and then hover over, and it will show me that entire block for socials, which is the second level header. If I had a top level header above here and I just said, Andy, and then I can change this reference to, the H1 header here now, Andy, and then go back to preview, Command and hover, it'll show me the entire file. Everything that is under the first level heading. So in some cases, this is actually beneficial because you can capture multiple swaths of information from a file, but it's not quite as granular as individual line and paragraph block referencing. Now, it's also useful to know that pretty much all of these, you can add a bang or exclamation point to the beginning, and that will actually transclude that piece of information. Transclude meaning you are including it, but it's from a different location, or in this case, it can be different files. We want to preview and show that contents embedded inside of another document. So I can preview this, and now you can see the entire note is actually referenced within itself, which is why you get this endless inception up to 5 levels of transclusion here, which is kind of fun to play with. But in any case, that bang symbol to transclude the piece of text or reference to that document can work for document level, header level, and now even the block referencing level. All right, that's cool. Whatever, I don't care, Brian. Show me the block level referencing. You got it. So block level referencing, instead of using a hash symbol, we're going to use a caret symbol. We use the hash to reference document names, or actually use the hash symbol to reference document headers. We can just reference the document name with the link, and then we use the pipe symbol to change what the preview text of a link looks like, but now we have a new symbol. So now I can do Andy, and I can still autocomplete, but now we're going to do a caret symbol. The caret symbol, little upward arrow, will now show you this menu. Now you saw before when I was referencing headers, we actually had H1, H2. It was telling you the level of the header there in a little, more aesthetically pleasing graphical kind of way. I already talked to the devs about changing the graphics of this. This is still showing the hash symbols for the levels of heading, and that's cool. But we can see line by line, individual bullet points I have here are all referenced in this menu because the caret symbol is saying, hey, which block of text, i.e. a line or a paragraph, would you like me to reference individually? Now you can see I have a little gray something right here. Like, what is that little piece of metadata? We're going to get to that. But what this looks like in practice is I want to say that, good old Andy Matuszak here is a knowledge worker. So I'm going to say, good old Andy is and then we're going to reference that little block of text. So if I just do this as a reference, it's just going to be a link. I want to actually include it. So I'm going to add a bang to the beginning. All right, so now, caret, what do we want to reference? That he's a knowledge worker. You can watch the preview over here of what happens. But when I click knowledge worker, now you have this little generated hash over here. And over here, you have a hash symbol, like we're referencing a header, but instead it's actually referencing that hash number or ID. This is a randomly generated unique identifier, or UID. This is a very critical piece of maintaining references to an infinite amount of blocks, but in a unique fashion. Because with each UID, you have the possibility to be all 10 numbers, 1 through 9 and 0, and all 26 letters. So that's a good amount of options for each digit of this, which gives you a large swath of permutations. So in that case, keeping these UIDs means that you have a unique ID for every single individual block that you will ever reference in your system. All right, cool. We made the reference. The metadata has been added to the source file. And so now let's see what it looks like in its destination here. When I preview that, we can see good old Andy is a knowledge worker. Now, obviously it didn't display Andy's name, but this is a way of including an entire block of text as if we were just saying, hey, give me the file, embed the file, or embed everything underneath this header in a file. And so with this way, we can easily embed little pieces of text information, entire paragraphs, and individual lines if we so chose. So you've seen it before, that if I just did 2 brackets to open a link, I can reference any file in my entire vault. Doesn't matter if it's in a folder, it'll show me the file path, but I can reference any file, anything. So I can reference Andy Matuszak here. Great. That's it. That's the entire file. But now you can also have two other different kinds of global searches. So now, just by opening two brackets, I can search for the heading inside of any document without having to specify what document I'm looking at first, where you normally will reference a document and then its headers, like Andy Matuszak here, hash, now I can see its headers. Well, instead of this, we now have a global search for headers, which we can do with hash hash, and now it's looking through every single header in every file in my entire vault. This is really great for discovery because now you can reference to individual headers and everything below them. So let's just say, I want to say, bash, and let's do streams. Okay, cool. Let's transclude that, preview, and now I can see everything under the streams heading in my bash map of content. Really neat. So that's really cool, but that's just headings. We just got block level referencing and a nice new shiny toy of bracket bracket, and now with double caret symbols, because we used one caret to reference a block of text in a file, we can do caret caret, and now we can reference any block of text in any file in our entire vault. Every file, every line. And the reason this works is that every single line of your file, as long as it's following the Markdown specification, so you have a blank line between lines of text, or you're just referencing an entire block of text or a unit like a image or a table, then you can reference that entire block with one of these UIDs. And so by using this block reference with that double caret symbol, we can see whatever file we're looking at, the headings, as well as the individual lines within those files. And because it will assign a unique ID as soon as we make that selection, we can then reference that block in any other document and it will still use that existing UID. All right, so let's see the global block reference in action. I'm just going to reference another thing inside of this document, so I'm going to reference knowledge worker here again. So we already have a UID for it, and so we don't really need to do anything about that. It's just that exists now. That block is forever until I change it, uniquely known as that hash ID. So let's reference knowledge worker, and you can see that every time knowledge worker is referenced, I have the name of the file and the block that is being referenced. And now I can see right here Andy Matuszak and knowledge worker. I'm going to click that, and now it just gives the hash symbol and the block. That's it. We don't have the name of the file, we don't have any sort of heading, it's just the block reference. And if I preview it, we can see that now the hash symbols are being replaced by the greater than symbols, and this will be essentially pointing to the block or the reference. So if I hover over this, you can see it's just that bullet point. Even though this bullet is part of this list, it still will only show me that bullet. And if we take this block reference, add a bang, now it's transcluded and we can see just that single piece of information. Now, some of the really cool things we can do with these block level references are we can move them. So this is the little piece of metadata, the UID, that is pointing at this particular block, knowledge worker. Now you can see that preview referencing that block, 573 E3A, 573 E3A, cool. Those reference each other, so I can say, hey, that's knowledge worker, that's knowledge worker, that's where that UID is, that's cool. What would happen if we just cut and paste? So let's preview again. Different block reference now. So what this is doing is that this little piece of metadata is pointing at whatever block it's next to or line that it's on. Whatever piece of information this is pointing at is that UID's block. So if I say, hey, show me that block reference 573 E3A, wherever I put that darn thing is what's going to be displayed or referenced to. So in this way, we were actually able to move these blocks if we really wanted to, and it's an easy way of maintaining them if you needed to move something around or quickly change a reference. Now, one thing you can do with these little UIDs and little pieces of metadata is we can actually define our own if we so chose. Personally, I don't think I would ever do this because I like the randomization of the hash and knowing that I'm never going to accidentally reference something in a duplicative way, and it always is what I expect it to be. So in any case, you can do this if you so choose, but we can actually define our own custom block level references. I'm just going to keep it simple. Knowledge worker is now the block level reference UID of test. Cool. So now we can use the syntax now for these block level references, which is a beginning hash and then the actual UID. So let's do bang, because we're going to transclude and show the result. Hash, and then it doesn't give me an autocomplete menu. Okay. But if I do test, now it will display knowledge worker. So the block level reference UIDs, if you do them custom like this, will display. But personally, reason why I would not do this is if you use this hash and you're referencing the name of a header or something that's common, common language, English for me in this case, I might get that confused with something, accidentally reference that as a heading or some other weird thing, and it's just not worth the headache or worth taking up, cognitive load or mental thought space for that. I'd rather just keep it random, keep it a UID, randomly generate a hash, and it's forever randomized and perfectly referenceable. Now, block level referencing, for me anyways, was released today, hours ago. It's still beta, so not everything works perfectly yet, and that is a-okay. So one of the things that Foam currently supports that block level referencing in Obsidian does not yet is the updating of the names of links. So for instance, you can see I have @AndyMatushak here. If I add a 1 to the end of this, you can watch the link as I press enter. The links will update automatically everywhere. That's a really cool feature because I never need to worry about those links being updated and always current. And I believe that's a feature that you set in your settings of when you want those to all be randomly updated automatically, or if you want to be prompted for that. But in any case, so we had the block level reference. I'm going to set this back up here. We had the block level reference to test. I can preview it. Knowledge worker, test. Yes. So I had that set, but what happens if I rename test here and I just say testing? Okay. Uh-oh. I broke the block level reference. Okay, that didn't work. So what if I change the name of the reference ID here? Testing. Preview. Nope, that didn't work either. Okay. So the block level references, unlike the names of links, and unlike block level references in Foam, which I believe is what this implementation is mirroring, is the UIDs do not update across all references of themselves, like the names of these files do in every time they're linked in any other file. That might be functionality that will be coming soon, but as of today, hours after release, of course, not everything is perfect and 100%. So for now, the UIDs do not auto-update themselves. Okay. And another good reason to, in my opinion, to keep the hashes is that, and this is going to be one of the hacks I'm going to talk about later of keeping up on all of these things, is if it's unique enough, like these, then you can easily grep them and then do sed to search and replace. If you've been following my channel from when I'm really into command line utilities, doing regex and search and replace on these would be a really great way of updating and maintaining a lot of these UIDs until better functionality exists in the GUI interface. Okay, cool. We actually have block level references to little pieces of text. This is incredibly useful and practical. So what are some other cool things that we can reference by block? Not just a line of text, there are some other cool things. Let's test some of them out. So I'm going to add a bang because we want to transclude. And then I'm going to say, I want to search for C++, data type, variables and data types, and I want to look for the blocks. And let's look for the table. Yes, this is the table. You can't tell here because the pipes are not showing, but I'm going to reference that table. And let's see what this transclusion looks like when previewed. So, Markdown tables, the entire table can actually be referenced as a block. If we actually go to that file and look at it, and I clicked on the link, it'll actually highlight in green that entire referenced block. Now, if I go to the actual raw text, we can see that the UID is right here, E35560, cool. And it's on the line below. I like to think of this as the caret is pointing up at its block in this case. The other UIDs are on the same line. I just look at it as like footnotes. How the footnote syntax is just referencing, upward caret, and here's the footnote. But, that's fine. And I like to imagine this one is actually pointing up at the block it's referencing. But you don't actually need this on its own line. I found this out by playing around with this today, that for these tables, in any case, I can actually put it at the end of that table, because this isn't something displaying. So these tables in Markdown are a bit sensitive when it comes to extra characters after the pipes. But because this is metadata that is not really displayed, you can actually have like these table references like this with the metadata right after the last pipe. You know, still displays correctly. Go back, still displays correctly, and everything's good. All right, cool. So far we're able to reference entire files, any heading and everything underneath that heading in a file, individual lines of text, markdown tables. We can also reference images. So this is an image I have embedded in my space repetition note, which shows the learning curve, the projected forgetting curve, where you don't need to keep prompting yourselves for repetition, so you keep that information in working memory. And we're going to reference this image. So if I preview it, you know, there's nothing there, just the actual transclusion of the PNG file, which shows the image. So now I'm going to reference this image by doing space repetition, and I'm going to auto finish with a upward caret. For the block level reference, I can scroll all the way down to the bottom. You know, here's a lot of my reference information and metadata. I don't want any of that. What I want is right here, space repetition.png. That is this file. So if I click that, now it references test, which in this case is actually something I set on here, test. It would be a randomly generated UID if you so chose, but we can see that, it will reference the image. And now I can also add a transclusion, and now the image is referenced in this transcluded block. So in this case, you can even pull in an entire image block, just like the table. Now, if you've seen my workflow video, and I can link that up there in a card, but I have a whole comprehensive workflow for my Obsidian zettelkasten system, and you can check that out. But one thing I do in there is I make prolific use of iframes. So if I went to look at, let's say, let's pull out a podcast. So let's say getting things done. Yeah. So this is actually a podcast player. Now this would work with the YouTube video. It'll work with anything, any iframe, because when you can see this is rendered as, you know, a podcast player. But if I show it raw, it's just an iframe. Interesting. Let's go back to our Andy note. Now let's actually remember that this is, you know, %, 2020, getting things done, all this stuff. This is all stuff I mentioned in my workflow video about why I name files this way. And yeah, so let's go back to Andy. And let's actually look at a block reference to an iframe. So if I do transclusion, double bracket, %, so I can see my podcast references, getting things done. And now, after getting things done, I want to reference a block of, there's the iframe. Now, if I reference that iframe, you can see now it gets a unique UID, or unique identifier, UID. If I preview that, it'll actually show me the transcluded block of the iframe, which is an embedded podcast player. This is really neat because now if it can be shown through an iframe in your Markdown file, if you have an internet connection, then I can also transclude that block level reference to that iframe in any other document. And so this will work for anything that can be held in an iframe. This works for air quotes, tweets, YouTube videos, podcast players, other websites, anything that you can embed in an iframe, which is a lot of things. You can do block level referencing to that iframe tag and then show it in any other document. And just as another example of what, you know, might look like if I was going to reference an iframe using a tweet, I can actually do all my tweets, which I only have one in here right now, and I can say, hey, show me a block level reference to that iframe, show me in a transclusion. It'll take a little bit to load because it's going through twit frame, but eventually it will show the tweet itself. Awesome. Cool little tweet by Bryan. So this is a really, really cool implementation of block level references because it can show tables, images, anything that you can embed with iframes, individual lines or paragraphs of text. And this is just all in addition to what we already had, headers and file names. So the Obsidian developers made it very clear, and this is common knowledge for probably most developers that deal with Markdown, is that these UIDs and doing block level references in this way is not a part of any particular established Markdown specification. What this means is this is not a portable feature. So if I take all of my now still plain text documents that are being looked at by Obsidian, it's just a directory filled with plain text files. If I throw that into any other system, none of these block level references will work. unless that system supports it. Foam might make it work, but who knows? Yeah, it probably will, but not a lot of other systems are currently using this implementation of this block level reference feature with Markdown files. So it's not a very portable feature or very future-proof if you plan to take a full advantage of this functionality. But one thing you can do is if you're sort of familiar and comfortable with the command line, if you want to make sure that you can always see where your block level references are, and you, for some reason, Obsidian no longer exists and no features are supported with block level referencing in Markdown anymore, you just want to be able to see your references, you could just use a simple tool. If you want to, search for every instance of, let's say I have this block ID for Andy's notes and Andy Matuszak's notes, I could just do RG, which is Ripgrep. It's a command line tool you can download from pretty much any package managing service. I'm on Mac, you can do brew install Ripgrep, or I think it's just brew install RG. Either way, Ripgrep. And I can search for that block ID. So I can paste that in, search for that, and Ripgrep searches recursively by default, which is why I prefer it better than grep in this instance, because grep needs a lot of other command line flag options to tell it to do this, but really it's just Ripgrep, give it an item, run it in the directory where your vault is. So I'm just in that vault directory, all my files are just there in a pile, and I'm searching for one little bit of text. That text is the UID. And you can see over here, if I actually move that over for you, you can see that I'm searching Ripgrep and just the name of the UID. If I run that, it doesn't find anything. Why? Because I actually need to escape that special character. And if I run it again, now it'll show me, there it is in Andy's notes. Interesting. So we also reference this in the Evergreen notes, and I referenced that in the upper portion here, D35013, but it doesn't find the caret because the caret symbol isn't in here. The caret symbol gets changed to the hash mark. So that's one reason why I personally would prefer to keep these as hash symbols, or hashes, because when they're so distinct and unique like this and not anything related to English, they won't be mistaken for a heading. And maybe you're not using the command line like this, but if you are, this might be something that you might want to take advantage of, because this will easily find every block reference in a moment's notice. And sometimes just using command line options and utilities on plain text files is just infinitely more powerful than using any sort of GUI interface. So Ripgrep the UID without the caret symbol, and it'll show me all the references. It'll tell me the name of the file, the line it's on, and pretty much the block with it on whatever line it's on, because this works on lines basically, or blocks of text. So in this case, using Ripgrep will actually return the block itself in some instances. And I think this is a really important and critical thing, especially why I think it's really important to be familiar with the command line, is this is somewhat future-proof. Yeah, you may not have the ability to easily maintain and update and change and deal with block references like this, but options exist for you to still utilize them in a way that makes sense. As long as you could easily randomly generate a hash or some weird combination of symbols, which you could easily do with a bash script or a Python script or whatever you want, and establish the syntax like this, and then search for it by using something like Ripgrep or regular expressions, really makes it easy to just keep up on all your plain text notes, especially with these tools. And just to wax poetic a little bit more about command line utilities, let's say you needed to actually update one of these UIDs across your entire Obsidian vault. Because currently there's no way to update all the links from one instance, like I can change the name of a file, every reference link to that file is automatically updated if I choose to do that, but no such functionality currently is implemented for these block level references in Obsidian. Maybe in Foam, but not in Obsidian, not yet. Personally, stuff like that doesn't really bother me. Why? Because I have perfect workarounds, such as sed or stream editing. You can ignore the -i.back and all that stuff because it's just some weird thing with the BSD version of these utilities on macOS, but really the important thing is the regular expression. And again, why I think it's better to just keep the random hashes. If it's not something that is commonly used, plain English, plain text, whatever, and it's something completely random, like a hashed UID, you're not going to accidentally replace anything that you cared about. So in this instance, I'm replacing that hash for the Andy's note links. Well, that one will actually go to Andy's notes right here, and we can actually see on both of these. Actually, let me open up both of them side by side so we can actually see. So we have the UID over here, we have the UID over here, and now I'm actually going to do a sed regex replace. And so what that means is I'm going to replace that UID right here with the words hello YouTube from sed. So you can ignore everything else going on here, just that regular expression is important. Let's run it. Awesome. So now you can see both of those UIDs have now been changed to my text. That's it. Across the entire vault, anytime that reference, that unique hash ID occurred, it would have then been replaced. And this is why I think keeping the hashes random is really useful and important for protecting yourself and your files if you're going to do something like this as a workaround to easily just update and change everything. And as if there weren't enough shiny toys that were just given to us in this brand new release, we now have a hotkey key binding that we can remap to complete and basically toggle checkboxes in Obsidian. This is really neat because now I can easily just say, I want to view a checkbox. So show me a checkbox. Okay, empty. Show this on YouTube. Neat. Now I remapped my key binding to control space, which for Mac, the control key isn't used very often. So yeah, I just did that. So if I do control space, that's all I'm gonna press, control space. It completes itself. And if I keep pressing it, it now toggles. Very useful. Really, really appreciate this feature. Lycat is the name of one of the devs. Great work. Thank you, Lycat and Silver, for the great work that you guys do on Obsidian. It's really awesome how far this application has come in just the brief time that I've been using it. And that's all I have for you on update 0.9.5. Block level referencing. Wow. So many new things to take advantage of. And for all of the holdouts that were stuck on Rome because of the block level referencing, yeah, it's not a perfect implementation. It's not perfect yet. It just got released today. And it's not exactly the same as Rome's implementation. But you know what? We're still in beta. Things are still developing. And at the rate of development on this application, who knows where this is going to go. For now, Obsidian just keeps getting better and better. There's so much we can do with this, and I'm excited to play with this more. So thank you all for watching. I hope you found this very interesting, and let me know what you guys think about this. Let me know how you're using block level referencing and what your thoughts are about this and Obsidian's implementation of it. If you'd like to talk more to me about this type of stuff or just see what I'm up to, you can join my Discord server. Link to that is in the description below and on my channel page. And before I go, a quick shout out to the patrons who support my channel. Thank you guys very much for your support. Devin, Alberto, Klaus, and Brandon, thank you guys for just being there and always providing your support for this channel. And I'll catch you in the next one. Block level referencing was Rome Research's bleh.